My father owned a Burger King near the fuel station at the edge of the borders in Colorado, and being the winter-walled place, our place was hot and warm and served a great deal of comfort. Though our menu was regular, the intensity of heat in the place made everything better. People would sit there for hours, and my father, being the businessman he was, he made the place so comfortable that people wouldn't want to leave, and that brought in more and more customers. And in the winter, the sales would just go off the charts, and people would come up and stay there for hours and ordering multiple times, and almost everyone was a regular customer there, and everybody knew everybody. Since my father was a self-made man, he taught us the same thing, and we were 14 when we started helping him in the Burger King, and I was probably the one rather more interested. My sister stayed back with my mother. She wasn't really into working a lot, but I looked up to my father, so I accompanied him every day. So he used to drop us at the school and then go back to the Burger King and start the day. And then my mother used to pick me up and my sister up and then drop me at the Burger King. I started with the cleaning staff, and then 6 months later, were promoted to work in the kitchen with rest of the fellows. I was responsible for the drinks in the beginning, and most of the work was of the machine, so it was much easier for me to stand there and work. I moved all the way to the kitchen and got promoted due to my work, and finally got to make the burgers. It was all pretty exciting, and to be able to work in a place that my father built from nothing was a great feeling. There were a lot of things responsible for getting promoted, but then even though there were the strict rules that my father had for the employees, the same rules applied to me, and he told me, "If you ever call me dad or father in the joint, I will fire you. You can either be the employee or my son in that place, and as long as you are working there, you better be my employee." And I had the same rules like rest of them. And even then, there were some that were jealous of this, and some of them never missed the chance to make me look bad in the place. And every time that happened, I would get scolded by my father, and they would all just love it a lot. So one day, they all decided to do me once, and for all, and prank me, and get me fired from the job. I was adamant on staying away from the objections. One afternoon, when they were at the station minding the register, one of customers asked me to see their baby while she gets her bag from the car, and I stood there doing nothing but watching the baby, when a man came in and held the baby, and I asked his credentials, and I told him that I cannot let him take the baby while the mother is out, and I just stood there trying to be firm. And that is where things got out of hand, as I was trying to take a stand. This is when he grabbed me and nudged me a bit forcefully, and I fell onto the other table, and the old woman sitting in the chair fell on her back and hit her head on the floor, and in a moment, there was blood all over. And one of the employees came running to the man and said, "What the hell is wrong with you? You were only to scare him and not push him." And I asked him what was going on, and he told me it was just a prank they were trying to pull on me, but it was all sideways now as the old lady was bleeding from her head, as everyone was there blaming me, even though it was clear who caused this accident. The old lady won't just get up or even respond. They called in the ambulance, and someone must have called the police, and the police did came, and everyone was pointing fingers on me though. There were so many people talking that there was a commotion, but mostly it was me getting the blame for everything. And then I was reaching out for my phone when the police officer shouted, "He's reaching for the weapon," and then shot me 3 times from the distance of a meter. I looked at the police officer and I mumbled, "I was taking out my phone." There was nothing but panic in the place, and I could see the life slipping away in front of me. That was the last thing I remember before I woke up in the hospital. It is a miracle that I survived. I'm still recovering from it. I just don't know when I will recover from the trauma of what happened. That probably might take years. Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. This incident happened to me about 2 years ago when I was celebrating my birthday party with my colleagues at Burger King. I was shocked to see that and was upset also because that ruined my birthday celebration and also sent all of us to the hospital. At that time, I was working in a software development company. I was a programmer and was working to my fullest to improve my skills and also to impress my boss. I always had this dream to work in a software development company in the future, and I followed my dream and worked hard to reach here. Finally, I got what I wanted. I was very happy with my work, and also, I was getting a good enough income, so I had no complaints at all from my life. Everything was going really well. I was living away from my parents in my hometown, which was several miles away from my company. I rented an apartment and lived with one of my colleagues, or you can say my best friend. She was my best friend and the one with whom I could share anything, and she always suggested the best for me. We both were true to each other and never hid any secrets between us, whether it was related to personal or professional life. We worked for the same department, and I met her after joining this job. The apartment we were living in was actually hers. I was just living in a shared house as she felt lonely there. We both were completely happy and satisfied with our current life. Everything was going well, until my birthday. The day was the 14th of December 2009, and this year I was turning 22. My friend told everyone in the office about my birthday. At first, they all greeted me and wished me a birthday, but soon they all started to demand a party, and since I was the birthday girl, I had no option but to give them a treat for my birthday. It was all thanks to my sweet but naughty friend. I agreed to throw a party after office hours. I wasn't planning to go somewhere far away, so I decided to take all of them to Burger King, which was just near our office, and treat them to a burger party. I wasn't sure about my plan, so I discussed my idea with my friend, and she agreed with me completely. Before I could say anything, she announced this to everyone in a loud tone, and everyone there started to dance. They all were happy and excited about the party. We worked till our office hours, and then around 6 p.m., we all left the office and went outside. At first, we decided to book cabs for all of us, but we were more than 20 in number, so we thought of walking as it was not too far from our office. I was walking ahead of my friend and everyone else was following our lead. We looked like a gang, but a decent one. Everyone stared at us while we were walking to Burger King, as if we were the point of attraction. I was feeling a little embarrassed, but I ignored everything and walked forward while keeping my head down. After walking continuously for 5 to 7 minutes, we reached our destination. We entered the store, and each of us grabbed a seat. Since it was my birthday, I went to the counter and asked the counter boy to receive order details from each one of us one by one. That was the best option, as I didn't know whether they liked my choice or not. The counter boy did exactly what I asked him to do, and after that, he asked us to wait for half an hour since our order quantity was too much, so we had to wait a little longer than usual. We all waited for our orders, and finally, after 20 minutes, our order was prepared and we all got our burgers. Before eating, all of them stood from their chairs gathered around me and wished me again, but in a loud voice with lots of claps. I was feeling embarrassed there, but inside I was really happy. This was the best birthday experience of my life after coming away from my parents and my family. I thanked all of them and asked them to enjoy the party. They all went back to their seats and started eating their burgers. We all would have just grabbed 1 or 2 bites when we heard a loud commotion outside the store. We all looked outside, and suddenly, lots of dogs came running inside the store. We all were shocked and stood up on our chairs. The dogs were even greater in number than us. They saw a crowd inside the store and started barking at us. Soon, the dogs smelled our burgers and snatched almost all of them. We all were there and witnessed the dogs enjoying our meals. We all were afraid to speak a word since there were more than 20 dogs in that Burger King. It was my birthday and my party for my colleagues, but instead of them, the dogs were enjoying my treat. We remained in fear of those dogs for the next 15 to 20 minutes until the counter boy called the Animal Control Bureau to come and catch those dogs. They arrived in the next 15 minutes and caught all the dogs and took them along. After everything was cleared, we looked at each other's faces and laughed out loud. We were laughing at our condition, and after thinking that it was not our party but the dogs were the ones who enjoyed the party the most, they ruined our party. Even after that, I asked the counter boy to repeat our order, but they all refused to do so since I had already wasted too much money. Also, after the dogs came in, a foul smell covered the whole store, and it was difficult for us to stay there any longer. We all decided to call it off for the day and return back home. They all wished me again for my birthday and went back to their roots, and I also returned to my apartment with my friend. We all were in a bad mood since all our planning was in vain, but there was nothing we could have done now, so we accepted the fact and went to sleep. Some say he was in a house fire. The flames had gnawed the skin like an old candle. Others swore he was struck by lightning as a child and that the bolt had forked directly into the poor boy's face. The rumors that he looked the way he did because of some horrifying nuclear accident at the nearby Donetsk power plant. Men swore he was real. Others said that it was all a lie. But back in the day, almost everyone in the greater Pittsburgh area had heard some variation of the Charlie No-Face urban legend. Some called them the Green Man, others the Monster of Beaver County, but the details were essentially the same. Some older Pennsylvanian even claimed to have met Charlie No-Face when they were younger, saying it was by far the single most terrifying moment of their lives. They described it like shaking hands with a Jersey Devil or sharing a makeup mirror with a Powder and Bloody Mary. We thought it was impossible. But there it is. Clear as day, really is you and me, because Charlie No-Face was real. And the story is just about as terrifying and tragic as a person can imagine. On August 16, 1919, an 8-year-old boy named Ray Robinson was taking a walk with his sister and a few other friends out near Newcastle, Pennsylvania. At some point, the children looked up to see a rather fetching bird's nest perched atop a nearby tree. Only, this tree happened to be dangerously close to an abandoned railway bridge. It's thought the children were engaged in an activity known as egging, in which children would cruelly steal birds' eggs in order to preserve paint or display them. But when Ray didn't know what was that just a year earlier, another boy had tried to climb the exact same tree and had managed to touch one of the exposed wires that still had a current running through it. The boy died a slow, painful death over the course of 2 weeks, and Ray was about to make exactly the same near-fatal mistake. A horrifying amount of current ran through his young body, so much those eyes, lips, ears, and nose were all hideously malformed, burned away completely. One of his arms was frazzled and rendered useless by the subsequent fall, while one of his hands was blown clean off of his wrist by the force of the electrical current. He went through an ungodly amount of pain suffering. But with the hard work of some top local doctors, little Ray Robinson miraculously survived. As you can imagine, Ray's life became extremely difficult after the accident, and not sure because of his injuries. Many of the larger Victorian-era homes in rural Pennsylvania, including the one Ray grew up in, really can be something to behold. The extravagant architecture include high ceilings, grand bay windows, and often the privacy of personal in-suite bathroom fixtures. In some cases, the level of domestic self-sufficiency meant that a person could remain in one isolated corner of the house for days, perhaps even weeks on end, as just as much as it could be used to provide a sense of comfortable solitude. Such features made for rather horrible gilded cages for people like Ray, and the South's family kept his monstrous form hidden away from the terrible public mile counts. Ray was kept isolated and shunned even by his own family. But he wasn't entirely mistreated during his upbringing. He was amply fed, and his love of baseball was indulged by parents that provided them with both baseball cards and a wireless radio with which he could listen to games. His parents also understood that he needed to keep busy, and also that they needed to teach him to function in society. They provided him with the means to learn Braille, and even taught him out of fashion wallets indoor mats that have used rubber tires. When he came of age, his family revealed a renovated apartment that made for him, sent into the family garage. It was much closer to them both physically and emotionally, and it meant the world to a young man who had been so terribly misunderstood for most of his young life. Only as he grew, a yearning to roam free burned in him. So in a small act of rebellion, Ray slipped out of the house in the dead of night and walked the highway near the family home. It became something of a habit. He enjoyed the feeling of the tarmac underfoot, the feeling of the breeze on the skin. After a while, he went from walking the highways once or twice a week to almost every night, always alone and always at night. And this is where the real-life Ray Robinson became a walking, talking urban legend. Most nights, on the rare occasion that a car did come along, Ray was so frightened by the sound of the oncoming engine that it scampered off the road and hid among the foliage. But after a while, he found he was unafraid of the roaring vehicles if he stuck to the side of the road. That didn't seem to bother him, so he made the decision to stop hiding. One day, Ray was walking along the highway when once again he heard the sound of an oncoming car. It unlike so many times before, and the vehicle had just rolled on by having not caught him in its headlights. Ray, or the screech of tires on the road behind him. A man cried out into the night, revving his engine the way that sounded a lot like reversing Ray Spooked, bolted off the road and into the cover of some trees. Ray swore off his nightly walks for a while, but the damage was done. And in nearby Elwood City, rumors began to spread that the man with no face. The first sighting didn't cause too much of a stir. People just thought the storyteller was tired, crazy, or drunk. But after a few months, a second sighting of an obviously restless Ray Robinson caused something of a frenzy among the local townsfolk. People would scour the length of the Route 351 once the sun had set, desperate to confirm the rumors of Charlie No-Face for themselves. But one by one, the people of Elwood found the rumors were all true. As one might expect, Ray's rather unusual appearances was the subject of equal parts fascination and revulsion. But for the most part, those that encountered him were not without compassion. People we began to offer him cigarettes or beer to amenities he had never had the fortune or misfortune to partake in, and like many of us, he found that he enjoyed them. It also seems that he was partial to having his picture taken, and as there are many confirmed photographs of Ray with smiling local arms around his shoulder, as if he was a beloved celebrity. Again, rumors spread that Charlie No-Face likes beers and smokes, and the town folks would bring tributes to Ray on a nearly nightly basis. And this only further incentivized his nightly rambles down Route 351. But not everyone who sought him out had good intentions. According to some Elwood residents, Ray was attacked and beaten up on more than one occasion. One person even tells the story of how one particular cruel character filled a bottle of beer up with his own urine, shielded it, then gave it to the blind wanderer on one of his Moonlight Jonesy. Some would stop him, not for to give him a ride, then simply drive in the middle of nowhere and kick them out the car. Shocking, but not surprising, as anyone even remotely familiar with humanity might be quick to remind you. When older Elmwood residents tells the story of driving down Wallace Run Road late at night with his friends, they brought with them a case of beer, a straw, and some cigarettes, and their usual tribute to the Green Man. Although his friends had seen Charlie No-Face before, our narrator had yet to have the pleasure. And when Ray Robinson finally presented themselves in the flesh right in the seat next to him, the man said he was frozen in terror. Everything they said about him was true, and his face really was green. And as it turns out, there's a rather grim reason behind the discoloration, as Ray's nose was basically an open wound for his entire adult life, and as a result, he often suffered from quite dangerous infections, thus turning his face a slightly verdant woo. People need to understand, the resident was quoted as saying this was a human being, a real person, and someone who endured one of the most tragic lives I've ever encountered. Underneath it all was this beautiful, kind man. Somewhere, there exists a photograph of Ray Robinson posing with a woman. It's clear that she's happy, that she's unafraid of him, and the way she holds him speaks to the warmth that she has for a man she may never ever have met before. all based on a well-deserved reputation of being a kind and gentle spirit that wouldn't let her life-changing accident keep them down. There's also an interview with a man whose brother was killed in action during the Vietnam War. By his own admission, his fascination with Charlie No-Face was a rather eccentric one, but he also credits Ray Robinson with helping through the darkest periods of grief he'd suffered so far. Ray wasn't just an urban legend, he was a real flesh and blood man, and a good one at that. Ray was living in an assisted living facility when he passed away in 1981, as grave as in the Grandview Cemetery located in 139 Norwood Drive in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. And coincidentally, it's just a few plots away from the little boy electrocuted in the exact same manner, just a year before his own accident. Occasionally, someone comes along to put fresh flowers down in Ray's grave. It's not clear whether this is one person or many, but the message is clear. Ray's legacy lives on, but it's in the terrifying tales the man with no face on love that those who came to know him show. So here's the Ray Robinson, the urban legend who turned out to be very, very real, and who deserves the rest in the deepest and most heavenly peace.